Hello and welcome to another A-Tippling Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine War Update Extra, giving you the juicy tidbits and extra information and nuggets regarding the war in Ukraine. Where should we start today? Well, let's have a look at the T-14 Armata. This is a tank that has not been constructed in any great numbers to put on a battlefield, still exists really in prototype, but here it is seen on a mobilized troop training field. Training ground, and it sort of gets morale up to these troops. They seem fairly happy about that. It is a tank, whoop-de-doo, but it is, well, it's been lauded as this great new Russian tank, but we just haven't really seen it. It is, so what does Wikipedia have to say? It's a next generation Russian main battle tank based on the Armata Universal Combat Platform. What that means is that they use the chassis, the platform, to make, different vehicles. Well, let's have a look here. So Universal Combat Platform. So you've got the main battle tank here, you've got an infantry fighting vehicle there, and a self-propelled artillery. These are all based on the same kind of platform, the same frame, and you can adapt it to make whatever it is you want to make. And it is, there it is. It's been in design since it was designed in 2014 onwards. I think. Has it been put on hold for the time being? I mean, this seems to go till 2021, and I guess I think I gave you some news about it being put on hold for the time being. But there you see it, you just don't see it on the front line. And this is exactly the sort of thing that Russia really could have done with. They're using T-62s, T-64s, these really outdated, obsolete tanks. And they've spent trillions of rubles designing things like this. But why is it that these haven't got to the battlefield in any numbers or at all? And the answer is corruption. The answer is that money is being diverted rather than being put to the use it was intended for. And as a result, the Russians have gone to war and they're not doing very well. Anyway, there you go. I've already told you this. So the Washington Post, Iran to help Russia manufacture weaponized drones for war in Ukraine. The Washington Post reports that Iran and Russia have quietly reached an agreement to begin assembling hundreds of unmanned weaponized aircraft in Russia. And I've told you about how Iran gets to make these drones and missiles using microchips they're getting from all around the world, including, the last time they looked at a Shahed 1 through 6, they reckon 30 companies were involved in providing those parts, or at least manufacturing those parts. Then they go out to suppliers, and they go out to other suppliers, and eventually these things end up in Iranian hands. The question is, how do American, European, Chinese, Japanese parts end up in these Iranian drones when they're under sanction? And it's just really difficult to keep a hold of. You can't. Well, you could sanction Iran utterly and completely, but you'd have to block their borders and nothing could get in and out, and that would cause a humanitarian catastrophe, really. You can't stop an entire country being able to import food, for example. So, somewhere you've got to draw the line as what's acceptable. And at the moment, there are components that are seen as acceptable to import into Iran because they need to use them for general everyday things or toys or this and that, but you can co-opt those parts and use them in drones. Now, the idea that why I wanted to bring this up again is if someone like, I don't know, someone in Europe, I don't know, Hungary, for example, decided they were going to provide Russia with a bunch of stuff. The EU have the ability to twist Hungary's arm financially. You can't. If you do that, we will not give you the money that you're supposed to get from this EU budget, or this or that. Or other countries might say to them, we won't import these things to you, or we'll put an embargo on that to Hungary. So then Hungary is able to be, I guess, sort of blackmailed or persuaded, or however you want to see it, into not doing business with Russia. The thing about Iran is they're so far out there now, and then following Trump coming out of the Iran, nuclear deal, they're even further away from us doing any kind of work with them and being able to persuade them. So they've got nothing to lose realistically from doing. In fact, they've probably got quite a lot to gain, which is gaining trade deals with Russia. You know, becoming closer to someone, having someone as an ally, a much more formalized ally, and then maybe that's a route into China. So actually, Iran could be thinking, yeah, this is a good thing, and the West doesn't just has no way of being able to bribe them, being able to persuade them, being able to enforce them not to do these things, and that's quite difficult. You know, we can do that with other countries, but we can't do it with Iran. They are already, you know, outside of our sphere of influence, other than more draconian sanctions, and I guess you could argue for that. Um, okay, let's move on to France and their announcement that they are going to provide 2 batteries of Crotale air defense. France has also been training Ukrainian military on the use of weapons it has provided, including Milan and Mistral missiles and VAB armored personnel carriers. French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu said recently. Now, what people probably don't realize is that France is a huge military exporter. So they've overtaken China this year as the 3rd biggest arms exporter. So you got the US, it was Russia. I don't think Russia would still be that anymore. France and then China. So France are a huge like military arms exporter. And we're probably outside of France. I mean, was again understand your lenses that you see the world through. I just didn't know this particularly. I knew that arms were fairly big for them, but just not quite this big. So that's interesting. So the Crotale is an all-weather short-range surface-to-air missile. Short range, I think they're called SHORADs sometimes. I may be wrong. Oh well. Surface-to-air missile system developed to intercept airborne ranged weapons and aircraft from cruise or anti-ship missiles to helicopters, UAVs, or low-flying high-performance fighter aircraft. It was developed by Thales and consists of a mobile land-based variant as well as various naval ones, and these are almost certainly be the land-based ones. So the missiles obviously depends upon what missiles you send out of that as to what the range is of what it's firing. But that is obviously going to be hugely important for the Ukrainians who need as many air defense systems as they can get hold of. They are getting such a massive range of air defense systems, then you have further problems with training and maintenance and the missiles that fit these systems, so on and so forth. So it does get a little bit more complicated the greater the variety of weaponry you have. But it's still really, really useful. So they're training the Ukrainians on the use of Mistral and Milan missiles. So Mistral missiles are commonly called Mistral, is a French infrared homing short-range air defense system, and based on the French. It's a portable missile. Based on a portable missile later to become the Mistral, and it began its development in 1974. It was initially deployed in 88 for the first version, 97 second version, 2019 for the third version. I'm not sure exactly what they're getting. So these are SHORAD missile systems, or indeed missiles here as well. So what was the range of these? Effective firing range up to 6 kilometers, or 7+ for the Mistral 3. I don't know which version they have, but that's the Mistral. Cool that they're getting trained on that. And then you've got the Milan, which I think is more like a sort of man-pad missile. So that's your man-portable air defense missile system. So you often fire from a shoulder-launched piece of equipment, or you can have them on tripods or whatever, like you can see there. And these have a much shorter range, so 200 to 2,000 meters, or 3,000 meters for the Milan ER. So that's less than other manpads that we've seen, and ATGMs even. So really quite a short range missile, but they're being trained up on that. French are providing obviously a fair amount of kits. So yeah, good. Right, let's move on to this is what Peter Clifford says in one of his updates. that Vadim Boychenko, the Ukrainian mayor of occupied Mariupol, is already making plans to rebuild his city when liberated. Signed a deal today in Poland with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. This is quite interesting that actually you've got people who are in exile, effectively talking and doing deals about the presently Russian occupied areas. Just the confidence they have going forward of Ukraine winning this war and getting those occupied areas back under Ukrainian control is quite impressive. And they're actually doing deals. They're looking forward. Now, why this is also interesting is again is comparing to Russia. So while they're doing, I mean, let's look at the sort of things that he is working on. So one go down in history as one of the most heavily bombed, shelled, and rocketed cities since World War II. In 2 months, says the mayor, Russian troops inflicted more damage on Mariupol than German troops did in 2 years of occupation during World War II. In fact, 90% of all city infrastructure has damage of varying severity. 11 out of 15 hospitals have been destroyed, 39 out of 63 schools have been destroyed, 25 out of 79 kindergartens have been completely wiped out, so on and so forth. Now, why this is interesting is because although the Russians will be doing some work at the moment, I think this signifies quite an interesting difference between Ukraine and Russia, which is Ukraine are desperate to want to get what they see as their cities back under their control and to redevelopment and bring them back to some kind of normalcy. And they have a vision of what they want their country to be that I think, and this could be my bias, right? But I just don't get the idea that Russia is interested in this. They're not in this for the good of the Ukrainian people. They can't be anymore. Like it's obvious. You look at the liberation of Kherson and how happy those people were to have it back under Ukrainian control. What has been done to Mariupol is an absolute disgrace, and the vision that Ukraine have appears to me, at any rate, to be quite different from the vision Russia has. And Russia, this seems to be all about the utility of these places. It's a utilitarian kind of conquest. It's like we are getting these because of we want this strategically as a buffer zone for NATO, and we want they're not necessarily concentrating on the lives of the people who live there and the well-being of the civilians. Like we want this place to have really good education system. We want this place to operate such that the well-being of the citizens is maximized. And I think that kind of tells you all you need to know. Maybe I'm wrong. Some pro-Russian could say actually they are. Look at these policies they want to put in place in Mariupol. Look at what they want to do to this place. But for me, it's like no, we want this place to be so pro-Russian. We want to put statues up. We want to do this. We want to do that. Why are you spending money and time shipping in statues to Russian cultural icons or whatever, or military leaders, when you should be paying for schools to be built and hospitals to be properly supplied and so on and so forth? And again, it tells you all you need to know. Anyway, right, bad on Britain. Let's get a bit harsh on Britain here, or at least certain people in Britain. Britain imports Russian oil worth over £230 million via a legal loophole. Since the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion, at least 4 tankers with Russian oil have arrived in Britain. Now, the interesting wording here is 4 tankers with Russian oil, not Russian tankers. So what's happening is that there are transshipments taking place. So here they allegedly use the most common transshipment scheme, C, where tankers often turn off their GPS and cannot be tracked, according to the Times. And the Times are unfortunately it's behind a paywall, so I can't read the whole article for you, just the first couple of lines really. But at least 39 cargoes worth more than 200 million people have not been declared, right? And what happens is in Avostil, steelworks in May, the tanker Mariner 3, this is just an example, pulled out the South Russian port of Tuapse, carrying nearly 200,000 barrels of oil. After 5 days at sea, the 170-meter ship stopped alongside a bigger tanker, the Greek-owned Marinula, in the waters off Kalamata, Greece. Over the next 36 hours, the 2 vessels were connected by large rubber pipes, while the Marinula siphoned off some of the Mariner's cargo. After the ship-to-ship transfer, the Marinula sailed to the UK, where it docked in Immingham in Lincolnshire and on June the 6th offloaded about 250,000 barrels of oil. Official records, however, declare the UK received no oil from Russia in June or in July, so on and so forth. So there are loopholes, and this is happening all over the world as well. It's not just the UK. This is a huge problem. I think there's been evidence of this happening in America, and Russian oil finding its way to America and pretty much every nation in the world. Just have to be so tight because not everyone is moral. Like if I was a tanker owner, I'd like to think I'd be super moral here and say, no, I'm not taking Russian oil. But the reality is, some tanker owner here is saying, yeah, you can't take Russian oil, but this shipment is going to make you £250,000 or something like that. I'm making stuff up here. Then of course people's morality changes. Everyone has a price. And so it's easy for us to sit off here in our warm, comfortable homes or wherever we are around the world and say, you complete bastard. And this is what I say. This guy is morally repugnant, or these people, or this organization, or whatever. But everyone has a cost, and just ask yourself. And I like to think I'm fairly sure I would, because I spend all my time questioning my own morality, just all the time. It's kind of what I do as a philosopher. You're just like trying to be as ethical. I'm trying to be as ethical as I can all the time. I even question whether I should be doing these videos, right? And yet, someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, here's £250,000 for you to just sanction this transshipment transfer of oil, and then take this oil back to Lincolnshire." There's an awful lot of people in the world would say yes, and so it's easy to judge when we're not in that situation. Is kind of what I'm saying. However, that needs to be sorted. Like, that is wrong, and it needs to be sorted. It'd be interesting to see what the reaction to that is. I'd love to read that whole article, but it is behind a paywall. Okay, here's the 68th Jaeger Infantry Brigade of the Ukrainian Army hitting a Russian tank on the move with an ATGM. That's a anti-tank missile system, something like a Javelin or an NLAW, or all the many that they are using, knocking it out. Right, these kind of videos are 10 a penny. Why am I showing you this? So here it is. That's the tank firing off, and then you'll see a rocket come from down here. Comes from the bottom left corner. So, and there's two things I want to. Well, there's one thing. There you go. Not the corner, sort of off to the left hand side of the screen. Blows that, and it hits it back a little bit. So yeah, there are two things I want to talk about here. One is the fact that even with those huge impacts from rockets, quite often the people inside do not die. The tank does its job in protecting the crew, and the crew jump out and run away. It may be that maybe the driver has passed away, or some other situation. But you can see that these things do a good job often of protecting their crew. It's only when you start seeing the ammunition cook off. So this is probably not a Javelin or an NLAW, because this appears to hit as it comes in. It doesn't hit from above, so those missiles generally come up above and go down and explode everything inside, and then you get things like ammunition cooking off and a turret tossing. That is an ATGM that seems to have hit straight on, gone into the armor, and has taken out the tank. But these guys can survive because it's not one that completely guts the tank. The other thing I want to show you is just, you've already got a drone up here taking a picture of this, and then as you see here, you've got another drone there. You see that? We're getting to a stage where this war, there's just going to be so many drones in the air, you're just not going to know what's going on. It is just there's a massive proliferation of drones. Quite often you see, say, a Lancet drone hitting a vehicle, which is a kamikaze drone, or actually people don't like the use of the term kamikaze for various reasons. But these loitering munitions that loiter, then hit the target, and you have another drone watching that, getting the footage of it. Obviously doing a job other than just getting footage of a strike. Okay, here's a proof that prisoners are being used by Wagner. Here's a Russian hero, former Russian Major Sergei Kadatsky, who had been serving a 15-year sentence for murder of his wife. I think I remember this. I think I remember this story. Anyway, 15-year sentence for murder of his wife went to Wagner, died in Ukraine, and was awarded the Medal for Courage, decision on assignment of which is signed by the president. And here he is getting arrested back in 2017. Drunk Kadatsky on Rostov-Taganrov Highway opened fire at a car in which his wife and father-in-law were driving. The woman died on the spot. Her father has survived, but doctors fought for his life for a long time. Former policeman was sentenced to 15 years of strict regime. Or what is it, 5 years, and then going to fight on the front line. However, he's met his end eventually in the Ukraine war. On the Eastern Front, no doubt, where Wagner are fighting, and that's to show that they have indeed rounded up a bunch of prisoners. UK has previously obtained arms from elsewhere. So this is, right, let's go to the original tweet here. Where will the Prime Minister... So yesterday I told you about how Rishi Sunak has announced a bunch of extra aid to Ukraine, something like £50 million worth, I think, which included 125 anti-aircraft guns. And this is all to try and help, or most of it appeared to be to try and help defend against the Shahed 136 drones and other sort of drone capabilities, as well as cruise missiles that Russia are using so much, or have been. Here, where will the PM source these 125 anti-aircraft guns? As far as I know, the UK military just has just 30 odd Phalanx CIWS, mostly bolted on Royal Navy ships, plus a few CRAM ground versions bought to protect bases in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then Shashank Joshi replies to this because it was asked to him, I think. Yes, who is the Economist defense editor. UK has previously obtained arms from elsewhere, e.g. howitzers from Belgian company, 122mm rounds allegedly from Pakistan, and sent them to Ukraine. These mysterious anti-aircraft guns could be another example of that, with the lack of detail to protect the source country. This is happening loads, right? I saw some Bosnian mortars turn up and wondered whether they came from Bosnia or from some other country getting them from Bosnia and then giving them to Ukraine. You get some countries who want to help Ukraine but don't seem to want to help them by giving them they want it to be a bit more clandestine, so they don't give them stuff or sell Ukraine stuff up front. They get other countries to buy stuff off them, and then that goes to Ukraine. So when the UK say, yeah, we're going to give you 125 anti-aircraft guns, it doesn't necessarily mean that those anti-aircraft guns will be from the UK. It means the UK will provide them. Hey, we're going to do that. We're spending the money to do that, but we might have to source those guns from, I don't know, you can make stuff up here, Ecuador, Venezuela, Timbuktu, the Cook Islands, who knows, whatever. You get my point, is that they can go around the world sourcing stuff for Ukraine and selling them on. And then quite often this involves backfilling. So that the UK might buy stuff off a country who then say, right, America, or very likely in this situation, the UK will have the UK stuff. So again, like I was telling you yesterday, with the idea that this isn't just doing the moral help out Ukraine, that here the UK will want some benefit. And the US, with all their aid that they give, and every country, they will get benefit by manufacturing a bunch of stuff, stimulating the economy, doing X, doing Y, doing Z. Right? In this case, the UK might buy a bunch of anti-aircraft weapons off a country, and then say, we'll buy these off you, and we'll backfill your lack of these with a bunch of munitions at a really good rate that we'll give you from BAE Systems or whoever. And so, in fact, there is this kind of mutually beneficial situation. I don't know that's happening here, but you get my point. It's worth thinking about. So that's that. This is an example. Oops, I've got rid of it. Make sure it's in the right place. Oh, what have I done? Useless man. So here is Rasputitsa, which is the Russian word for the mud. And I'll just say that I should try and memorize the Ukrainian word, because some Ukrainians don't like the use of that word. The Ukrainian word means roadlessness. This is how to pronounce it. So this is my attempt. Bezdoritsha. Bezdoritsha.
Bezdorija.
Bezdorija. Bezdorija. That's not bad. Did all right. Bezdorija. So that makes me think Zaporizhia isn't Zaporizhia, but is Zaporizhia. Zaporizhia. I don't know. Who knows? A bit of language there for you guys. I could be wrong. So this is the Bezduri region. This is what vehicles and infantry are having to deal with. And even tracked vehicles will struggle to get through this and get stuck. If you remember, right at the beginning of the conflict in February, March time. Oh, what word did he say?
Лучшая работа в мире. Это лучшая работа в мире.
No, I don't think he said it.
Это лучшая работа в мире.
No. But yeah, so right at the beginning of the conflict, you saw loads of Russian vehicles getting stuck, even tracked vehicles, tanks, all sorts, getting fully stuck in mud like that and having to be abandoned. There was nothing they could do. It was stuck, and there's no ARVs around to get it out, because the chance of the ARVs getting stuck would be high as well. So there you go. That mud is causing problems, and even though you might have warm weather at the moment, if it's raining, what you want is dry weather. Dry weather to start drying up some of that rain. But of course, even 5 days of fairly warm weather, dry weather at this time of year probably won't, get rid of all that much of the wet going on there. Hey ho. So I've shown you a few times Ukrainians having a bit of fun. Because if you're in a very dangerous war, and the drudgery of war, and the threat of death or injury at all times, and certainly living a life of discomfort for a lot of these people, you want to find some excuse to have some fun. Just like, and here's a helicopter pilot's having some fun. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that one in there. As we come towards the end, Brimstone missiles. I talked to you about Brimstone missiles before. Oh, that's another thing. In the Svatova direction, look at all these Wagner Dragon Teeth, or I'm not saying they're Wagner, they're probably not anymore, but it's a Wagner that started doing this, and now you're seeing Dragon's Teeth all over the shop. So it's something to watch out for. This is the idea that the UK are providing Brimstone 2 missiles, as well as lots of Turkish stuff here, so that's quite interesting. Man pads, again, man portable air defense systems, and electronic warfare equipment for Bayraktar TB2 drones, electronic warfare equipment, ground-based stuff. So multiple rocket launch systems. So Turkey seem to be doing a good job there. Now, these Brimstone 2, I showed you the other day how Brimstone, which is quite versatile, can be attached to like trucks and whatever. And the thought is that was, although it's quite difficult to tell with the resolution of that, it's thought that they were Brimstone missiles. Well, the Brimstone 2 is quite an upgraded missile. So this has more than 200% increase in the range, improved seeker software and airframe design. So it looks like there's evidence now, Brimstone 2, photographic evidence, dual mode missiles being sent to Ukraine. And these are pretty useful pieces of kit. They were originally supposed to be fire and forget, but actually they do have laser guidance as well. In the dual mode, which is the one that we're talking about here, missile allowing a spotter to pick out the specific and highest priority targets, particularly useful to minimize collateral damage when friendly forces or civilians are in the area. And these have, pretty expensive, 105,000 quid a unit, even more if you include the development costs. And the Brimstone 2 has a range, so the Brimstone 1 has a range of 20 kilometers. These have a range of 60 kilometers, so that's over, that's about 3 times the range. So impressive. They are supersonic Mach 1.3 missiles that pack quite a punch, I guess. Are they? They're quite. It's not that much. That's a pretty small warhead. I'd have to look into that actually. Anyway, there they are. That's going to be very useful for the Ukrainians, and it's good that UK are providing those. Anyway, there you go. That's it for me. Please check out my this is at my new home, so don't check it out. You are here. If you're watching this, you are at my new home. I'm trying to migrate. I'm to this channel by doing alternate extra videos here for a week, and then all the extra videos will be here, and then I'll be slowly migrating my map videos over in the same way. Let's do a bit of spam. Thank you so much for your support. Please like, subscribe, share. UAsupporter.com/ATP. If you, so this is in collaboration with Reporting from Ukraine. If you want to buy, I don't know, laptop cases. For example, you can get some stuff, some laptop cases that show your support for Ukraine, and a little bit of the commission goes to my channel. So that's really appreciated if you do. If you like reading, I won't bore you with all my philosophy books, but I do write fiction as well, adult and child fiction. This is Survival of the Fittest Metamorphosis and Survival of the Fittest Adaptation. This is a series, a dystopian future set in Britain, but as people come to grips with a pandemic, and I actually started writing this before the pandemic. 2016 was the first book. Got really good reviews. Check them out. A little bit of philosophy woven in, or quite a bit of philosophy woven into the narrative there. If you fancy a good read, I think it's a good read. You might differ, but you won't know until you read it. Check out Survival of the Fittest, Metamorphosis, and Adaptation, available on a beautiful paperback. I love this mat cover. Johnny Pierce. There you go. You can buy it at all good bookstores and whatnot. Thanks for all your support. Toodle pips, and I will speak to you tomorrow.